Now, our next young speaker wrote his first book of 27,000 words when he was just 11 and this tall. Today, he is this tall, and he is a regular feature for Young Reader Club magazine, and much, much more. In fact, I've already mentioned him. He's one of the contributors for No Place Like Serangoon Gardens. So let us warmly welcome my fellow young author, Lee Tat Wei.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tat Wei, as introduced. I'm 17 this year. I'm now in year 5 in ACS Independent. So just to introduce myself a bit, I participated in the Young Author Awards when I was P5, so that's like 6 years ago. And yes, I'm very privileged to be here today to share about my experiences on writing this book. But I think first I want to talk to the finalists today, because today is about you. So I just want to encourage you guys, regardless of whether you win today or take home a prize today or not, your writing journey only starts here. It doesn't end here, and it can only improve from here onwards. So yes, by being here, you have shown some form of passion for writing, and your literary merit has been affirmed by the fact that you're sitting here as a finalist. So don't give up and continue writing. So basically, to go on to what I'm here to share today, on heritage journeys, no place like Serangoon Gardens. Honestly, when I first started out this project, it was with a neutral attitude. I wasn't really excited for it. Why? Because I thought that this book would be something about big picture, something about Singapore, because it's Singapore's 50th year. So I thought it would be something about like Singapore's heritage. But during the first meeting, I remember it was at a clubhouse in Serangoon Gardens, and I entered the room, and flashed on the whiteboard was Serangoon Gardens and then the various aspects we wanted to cover. So I was a bit apprehensive in the sense that I was wondering why we wanted to cover Serangoon Gardens specifically. Like, why not cover Singapore? And don't get me wrong, I love my country. I was taught and programmed to appreciate our nation via our national education. But because of that, because of national education, my appreciation for my country was limited to this hardly malicious, but perhaps ignorant words of thanks that was in itself quite hollow in emotion. Because I appreciated my country, I was patriotic, but I didn't know why. And honestly, this book project taught me all about that. So what it was like at first, as I shared, I wondered why it was about Serangoon Gardens specifically. But I remember the first time we went down to the neighborhood itself, I think Mabel was there to bring us on the tour and give us a history of the place. And I still remember that it was really hot, I was really sweaty, and the day was sweltering hot, so I actually didn't like it at first. But as we walked along the neighborhood, we got to talk to people, we learned about history. I started to get more excited because I realized that there was so much depth in the neighborhood. There was so much things that I could learn about in the neighborhood that I didn't think I could. So in this book, I covered basically 3 aspects. I talked to 5 people. I talked to Mr. Edmund Chai, who owns my village, which was back then Paramount Theatre. I talked to Mr. Arul Subramaniam, who is a resident at Serangoon Gardens. He was once a national hockey player for Singapore. I talked to Mr. Jason Koh, who runs Garden Street Kway Chap at the Serangoon Gardens Garden Food and Market Place. I talked to Mr. Tam Yap Tiong, who is here today, from Rolling Curry Puffs. I talked to Mr. Lee Chin Soo and Mr. Stephen Tan from Pausing Chicken. So I learned a lot from them. From Mr. Edmund Chai, I learned about his childhood in Serangoon Gardens. And honestly, when I first had an interview with him, it started out as a normal, monotonous interview, honestly, like, what was the childhood like and stuff, but it progressed to something more meaningful and emotional and more deep. Because as he described his childhood, he described sneaking into theatres and watching movies with his brother. He talked about going home after school. And I really felt the emotion in it, because for me, Serangoon Gardens was a book project, but for people like him, for people who lived there, Serangoon Gardens was their life, it was their culture, it was their history. And so I learned a lot about that from him, from Paramount Theatre, because back then it was a theatre, but as Singapore modernized, as Serangoon Gardens modernized, the building itself became obsolete, and now it's my village. And honestly, I had to go to Serangoon Gardens a few times because of the book project. And I went to my village and sat there and drank coffee, did my work. And I realized that the atmosphere in my village and places like Ion Orchard is completely different. Like, people go to Orchard to like party, to like talk loud and stuff. But when you go to my village, you really see families there bonding. You see people talking to each other, meaningful conversations, not just shouting for no reason. Then it's quite interesting as you sit there, you observe your surroundings. You realize that Serangoon Gardens is so much more than just food places. There's actually a heart to it. There's actually a living, breathing soul underneath the community and the culture in it. So the next person I talked to was Mr. Aru Subramaniam. He was a national hockey player for Singapore back in the 1970s and 60s, I think. So what I learned from him was he was super jovial. He was extremely animated in how he described his sporting career. He talked about that final penalty score that he had in the finals against Malaysia. He talked about his training overseas. He talked about his journey as an umpire for hockey. And I really learned so much from him, not only as a sportsman, because I'm a sportsman myself, but I also learned a lot in the sense that I realized that Serangoon Gardens is not just about the places, it's not just about the culture, it's a lot about the people. And as we wrote the book, and as you read the book, if you will, you realize that we cover a lot about the people in the community, because that's what the community is about. It's about the individual successes and experiences that add on to the collective spirit. And I believe that's what's most beautiful about this book. It's capturing what the community is about and not just about the history about the place. Because history can be found in any history book. You can go to Google it, but you can't Google someone's life. You can't Google someone's experiences. You can't Google someone's dreams, ambitions. And that's what we captured in this book, I believe. And so I also talked to a few of the stall owners. I talked to Mr. Jason Koh from Garden Street Kway Chap, and he had a very interesting story. He became a hawker because he wanted to preserve the recipe from his grandfather. Because if I'm not wrong, his grandfather first made kway chap back in the 1940s, and his parents continued the tradition, and he continues it today. But what he told me is that he's actually a qualified pilot with the relevant ratings. He came back from Australia one day from his pilot training, and then decided to continue to be a hawker at Serangoon Gardens making kway chap. And he told me about, and this may not be politically correct, but the thing is that, and it's quite true honestly, a lot of us may look at hawkers and we make judgments about them. We make unjustified judgments about them without knowing their story and stuff. But honestly, after hearing Mr. Jason Koh talk, I really learned the heart behind the food. Because we go to hawker centers to eat, we go there to fill our stomachs. We don't think about the life stories of the person handing us the food. We don't think about what they did why they did what they did. And so Mr. Jason Koh talked a lot about his passion to preserve the recipe from his family. And I learned a lot from him. I talked to Mr. Tam Nyap Tong. He has 5 decades of experience in making curry puffs. And I loved how he talked about his customers. He called the customers his friends because he really looked at them like they grew up together. I remember he told me that he remembers a mother and son who always came to buy curry puffs from him at the beginning. And as he grew up, the son grew up, got married, and brought his own family to buy from him. So he effectively saw 3 generations of a family just from selling curry puffs. And I believe it's these bonds you make with your customers that really make being a hawker so invaluable. And again, that's why I learned so much about the neighborhood. It's not just a food haunt for tourists. There's really there's a heritage to it, and there's a culture to it. I talked to Mr. Lee Chin Soo and Mr. Stephen Tan from Pao Sing Chicken, and they've been partners in the restaurant for over 30 years. You could tell they had a lot of passion for their food. They said that they wanted to start the Hainanese chicken rice because they felt a lot of pride in their culture because they're Hainanese people. And they also wanted to spread the culture to the people here in Singapore. And so they started a store on it, but they also realized they need to modernize. So they included a lot of Peranakan dishes into their restaurants. And you can see that they really, really love being an F&B business. When we asked them what made them happy in these 30 years, they told us it's the process. They said that they didn't really mind much about the end product. It's about the 31 years they were together, working hard together, suffering together to create this business that was so successful right now. And it's the fact that they were doing something they loved that was so important to them. Honestly, these stories themselves are quite touching already. But the fact that is, we weave together these individual stories into this book, and we add on to the canon of Singapore literature. And that's so important. Like I said at the beginning, I had a bit of grievances because of the fact that I thought the book scope was too narrow. Serangoon Gardens, why Serangoon Gardens? Why not Ang Mo Kio? Why not Tampines? Why not Yishun? Why Serangoon Gardens? I realized it's not really the specific place it is. It's about the people in it. I mean, we always say to love Singapore, love your country, love your history, be proud of your nation, but it's such an abstract idea. How do you be proud of your nation? Why do you love your country? And it's when we go into these specific things, when we look at the neighborhood, we look at the people, we look at the history of the neighborhood, that we really see how Singapore has grown, what Singapore has done for us, what we have done to Singapore. And that's when we really, really love when we know that we really love the nation. Because Singapore's story is not just about our journey from Merdeka to Marina Bay Sands. Our story is hidden in the little pit stops between these milestones. It's not just about the political milestones in our history. It's about playing catching in the void deck. It's about meeting your first love in a coffee place. It's about catching spiders and making them fight. Without all these little stories, Singapore's history will only highlight times of turmoil and strife. The most crucial part of appreciating our past is celebrating its happiness. And as we trudge on forward with the nation, and as skyscrapers grow taller and cast its modern shadows over the Angsali houses, Angsali's houses are rampant in Serangoon Gardens, we will forget our past. It's inevitable. We won't remember every single thing of our history. But I think that's why this book is so important. Because this book seeks to capture and immortalize something of our history. It may start at Serangoon Gardens, but perhaps it will go on to a systematic marathon around Singapore. It may go on to Marsiling, it may go on to Eunos, it may go on to Bukit Batok. And every individual region, every individual neighborhood will have its own story to tell, even though we're all Singaporeans. We are a nation with such a diverse population. So the fact that every neighborhood has its own story to tell adds on to our entire history and culture. Without these documented memories, what unites us Singaporeans is merely the vague silhouette of nationalism. It's the empty words that say that I love my country, but I don't know why. To truly love our nation and appreciate our past is to learn the little tales that make up the big story. The individual experiences between people that make them love their neighborhood, love their country. That's what is so important. And this all starts in this book. Heritage Journeys, no place like Serangoon Gardens. Thank you.